Good afternoon to you. 5:06 now. Make that 4:06. We're not quite there yet. 4:06 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Joe DiGenova joins us this hour. My buddy Joe, former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. Talk to him about the effort by Democrats to meddle in the election in 2024 in the most brazen of ways. Just remove Trump's name from the ballot. Do these people even hear themselves? And then Gabriel Naranjo will be with us, a former State Department advisor on Iran, to assess Joe Biden's giveaway of billions of dollars to that terror regime. And you can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A lot to get to. I want to get to crime in Washington, D.C., because that seems like an important topic. But first, I'll take a phone call. Leo's calling in from Colorado. Line 2 wants to talk about Zelensky's visit to the UN today. Hello, Leo.
Hey, Vince. You know, I told Corey, I said, I can't help but laugh so hard I'm falling off my seat with this Zelensky thing. He's not preying on their sympathy. He's preying on our stupidity. That if we're that stupid, that a guy that's in a major conflict with one of the world powers,
yes,
coming and talking about this nonsense, and we believe him, I say send him some more money. Why not? If people did it.
So,
I mean, come on.
In case people missed it, just a moment ago, I was playing audio. Vladimir Zelensky addresses the UN today, and he says that the big problem our planet faces is climate change, and we all need to work together on that. And so he's got, you know, by some estimates, hundreds of thousands of people who are dead in his country. The killing just keeps on going. And so he's standing up there at the UN begging everybody for money. And so he's playing the hits. He's like, and you know what? Climate change, he screams out. And apparently they just decide to cut him checks as a result. It's all so ridiculous, Leo. They're all a bunch of suckers, aren't they?
Yep, sure are.
Yeah.
That's all I had to say. It's just, you know, another. They're making it. The world is a laughing. The U.S. is a laughing stock to the world. We really are.
Big time.
I mean,
Trump always said that, right? They're laughing at us, and it's never been more true than today.
Yep. Sure is. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, Leo. Good call. So let me talk about D.C. now and focus on this, because I really think this matters, and I know it matters to you too, especially if you're somebody who works and or lives in the district. And if things have gotten hairy or dicey for you lately, happy to take your calls as always. 888-630-9625. Fox 5 has a report this week of a man who was brutally attacked in Union Station at the food court. Do you remember the Union Station food court? Has it been a while since you've been there? It's been a while since I've been there. I used to go there. I used to go there for lunch. I used to work near there, and I would go there for lunch. I'd have a perfectly safe time. I would choose from one of the many restaurants available on that lower level. They were a little cheaper than the ones on the upper level, and I could find a good meal, and I could get back to work. You know, but not so much anymore. Listen to the report over on Fox 5 this week of one gentleman whose life was turned upside down because he picked a meal in the wrong place. Take a listen.
Welcome back. We are back with a Fox 5 exclusive. A man's out of the hospital and speaking only to our Shamari Stone after he was attacked inside Union Station Sunday morning.
And he says people stood by and just watched. Shamari Stone has that report from Union Station.
Good evening. Tonight, that man says he has fractures on his face, under his eye, by his cheek. He says he has difficulty sleeping because of the emotional and physical pain. Let me set the scene here. He was sitting in a chair similar to this one at a table here at the Union Station food court. He says a man was shouting at him, screaming at him, and came up from behind, punching him, knocking him out of the chair.
Some mentally ill lunatic running around in the food court just starts punching an unsuspecting civilian as he's eating a meal.
Onto the ground here at Union Station. And he says the man started punching him at least 15 times. Now, the attacker eventually stopped and went away. Now, tonight, you're going to hear exclusively from the victim, who says that he's too scared to show his face on camera out of fear of retaliation. How are you feeling tonight?
Thank you, Shamari. I'm feeling in pain, first of all, because of the assault, and I'm feeling a little helpless from the lack of support that I felt I had, and I'm just hopeful that they'll be able to apprehend this man.
What was going through your mind during this attack?
His fist was going through my mind, and nobody was helping me.
I was just hoping that someone would step up to help me, and I didn't.
Did anyone step in?
No, not anyone from the 10, 15 people around me was able to help.
Now, after the suspect got away, 2 people came to the man's aid and called 911. Now, we reached out to Amtrak, and they released a written statement saying, quote, the Amtrak Police Department is working with law enforcement partners to identify and apprehend a suspect who fled the scene. If you have any information about this, call Amtrak Police. At Union Station, I'm Shamari Stone. Back to you, Jimmy.
Yeah, okay. So there's the Fox 5 report last night on this man who was just attacked for no reason. So yet another random attack. It's not the first time. Remember it was a Rand Paul staffer who just got stabbed in the middle of the street, doing nothing, just walking down the street, stabbed by a deranged person in the district. And that brings me to what is happening with members of Congress and their staffs right now. They are being advised by local law enforcement officials on how to sit in their car in traffic, given how dangerous things have gotten in D.C. Here's what the Washington Times says today in a front page report. Headline, Police deliver safety tips to Capitol Hill. You ready for this? Remove jewelry on public transportation to avoid attracting thieves. Keep your phone calls short to limit distractions while you're walking. Leave room at red lights in case a getaway becomes necessary. Do you hear that? Leave room while you're parked at a red light, while you're stopped, in case a getaway becomes necessary, so you can zip out. Police shared those tips and more Monday with Capitol Hill lawmakers and staffers at a briefing on surviving the district's ongoing crime wave. Representative Brian Steele, chairman of the House Administration Committee, hosted the informal safety meeting in the U.S. Capitol Longworth's building with representatives from the Capitol Police and the Union for the district's Metropolitan Police Department. The Wisconsin Republican told the Washington Times that the meeting focused on managing the risks associated with the sharp rise in violent killings, robberies, and carjackings in the district this year. There's no indication, quote, there's no indication that crime is being reduced in our nation's capital, so people are working to make sure that they're protected, Mr. Steele said. One police tip said that drivers should leave space between their car and the car in front at stoplights. These are like defensive driving techniques. This is teaching people how to become Secret Service agents or how to become Jason Bourne in traffic or something. You leave a little space so you can dodge the attack that's happening in the middle of the nation's capital. How third world is this? That would give drivers enough room to speed off if would-be carjackers approach. Greg Pemberton, the head of the D.C. Police Union, advised, we've talked to Greg many times, he advised against long phone conversations while out and about. The calls can take attention away from people's surroundings and make them more vulnerable to armed holdups, which contributes significantly to the city's violent crime surge. In some more basic but crucial tips, authorities advised people to keep valuables out of sight in a car or tucked away while walking to avoid catching the eye of a criminal looking to make a quick score. So you've got to, do everything necessary to protect yourself and your valuables. What kind of mark are you? The crime prevention strategies made a lot of practical sense to the estimated 75 lawmakers and staffers on hand for the meeting. But Mr. Steele was unnerved that the topic of rampant street crime in the city had to be addressed in the first place. Quote, it's incredibly disturbing that people have to even be thinking about some of these things, the congressman told the Times. The fact that we are in a position in Washington, D.C., where that type of advice is needed to be given to visitors to Capitol Hill or to staff members on Capitol Hill is concerning, end quote. And then they get into some of the data, in case you're wondering. I know you can feel it and sense it, but here are what the numbers tell us right now. The district has recorded a 29% year-over-year increase in homicides. That would be murders. 29% jump. Remember they were telling us it was the pandemic. That's when the worst of it happened. Really? So now 29% jump from 2022 to 2023. Year-over-year increase in homicides. We're on track to exceed 200 homicides for the third year in a row in the city. The city hasn't reached that milestone in roughly 2 decades, the Washington Times points out. Allow me to also point out that 2 decades ago, remember, D.C. was known as the murder capital of the country. So we're headed back for that distinction, I guess. Carjackings are up 101% from last year. 101%. with more than 700 violent car thefts and over 5,000 cars stolen this year alone. Wow, that's not, your odds are not that great, are they? So 5,000 car thefts, they said 700 of them are violent car thefts. So like 500, I guess, are hot-wired or something. They tell us it's the fault of Hyundais and Kias. They were dressed the wrong way, so they were targeted by the criminals. TikTok taught them how to steal Hyundais and Kias. That's how that happens. And then there have been more than 700 violent car thefts, I presume with knives and guns in the district. Robberies have jumped 67% so far this year. Some have turned deadly. 3 people were fatally shot during holdups in July. Violent crime overall is up 38% so far this year. All crime is up 28%. Guess who's charged with prosecuting crimes in Washington, D.C.? Whose job is that? Anyone? Anyone? If you've been listening to this show at any length or just today, you would know the answer to that. That's U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. And he's not doing it. 67% of all arrests last year he refused to prosecute at a time of skyrocketing crime. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are no strangers to the violence. Representative Angie Craig, she's a Democrat, she's from Minnesota. She was assaulted in February, remember that? Inside of her apartment complex by a man who had 12 prior convictions. That was the guy who attacked her while she was in the elevator. She threw her coffee at him to try and get out of it. A month later, a staffer for Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky Republican, was stabbed multiple times in a random attack by a man who had just been released from prison. 2 Capitol Hill staffers at the meeting told their account of being mugged after a group dinner. Mr. Steele commended the staffers' courage for recounting the incident. He said he appreciated how the staffers put a human face on the statistics. Quote, "This isn't some abstract theoretical issue," Mr. Steele told the Times, the Washington Times. "These are real men and women who work on Capitol Hill, who visit Capitol Hill, who are directly impacted by the rising crime that we have seen." It's just wild. So now you've got the cops. Now you have law enforcement authorities. Greg Pemberton, the head of the D.C. Police Union, a man who's been calling out the problems for years now and the lack of support that the cops are receiving from the leaders of the district. They have to brief members of Congress now and their staffs on how to drive to work. Leave this much space in front of your car in case you have to escape a violent carjacking. It's not awful that we've got that. This is the kind of stuff. This is the kind of advice that we used to give Americans when they would travel overseas, right? Like you would travel to another country. Hey, be careful in that country or be careful in that city. There's a lot of pickpockets. You know, make sure you wear the right pants and, you know, your wallet's not sticking out or, you know, you have to prepare. We would give people advice on how to travel to foreign countries in order to prevent crimes of opportunity from being taken out on them, right? Or violence. Don't go to that area. Stay inside the resort area. Very dangerous outside of there. Now in Washington, D.C., members of Congress are receiving briefings on what they can wear. Don't wear jewelry. Where they should hide their goods, their belongings. How far back they should sit from the vehicle in front of them at a red light. A little crazy? Yeah, a little crazy. Penny's in Burke. She's calling in on line 3. Penny, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi. I think that this is Muriel Bowser's fault from start to finish. Since Donald Trump was elected in 2016, she has been tinkering with the system and pulling back on her instructions to her chief of police. And every year it's getting worse and worse and worse. And now the citizens of the city, every citizen is in danger from what is going on. And it is Muriel Bowser's fault.
They're right at the center of it. And with the D.C. City Council helping along. I mean, they keep passing all of this legislation that's designed to advantage criminals and not the people of the district. And look where that's gotten us, Penny.
Yeah, I think that Congress better take back control and, you know, really make this point stick for any future mayor of the city that they must. It is their number one charge to make sure that the city is safe for the citizenry, and the Congress needs to take back that control.
Yeah, well, what's the point of even having a D.C. council or a mayor's office if if safety and security of the city isn't the foremost consideration. Penny, thank you. I agree with you. It's time for Congress to take over again. It's just like enough. We've had quite enough, and it's making the city hellish, and it's our capital city. What is that? I mean, obviously for the people who live and work in the city, it is a big problem. It's an immediate problem. But for a country, the nation's capital of this great country is afflicted by this chaos. Let's take Matt in Alexandria, now line 4. Matt, good afternoon. We're talking crime today. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Vince. Hey. Nobody wants to help another person being assaulted because they'll get the Daniel Penny treatment, and they will get prosecuted by these DAs that are beholden to, not the citizens, not the people, obviously.
Yes, instead a political agenda where the criminal is advantaged and the Good Samaritan is punished. So Daniel Penny, a Marine, gets charged for intervening and stopping an attack on a subway train. You're right. That is one of the lasting impacts of that it really chills the likeliness that other Good Samaritans will step forward, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
It's
Super
crazy.
5, Vince.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate the call as always. Let me take Marco calling in from Springfield now, line 1. Marco, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, get the word out to all the Fairfax County residents that want to dump Toscano. Go to Ed Nuttall-Write-In, WRITEIN.com, and get instructions on how to fill the write-in ballot come election day, because he won't be on the ballot. So he can run against Toscano if everybody writes it in.
So Steve Toscano, so people understand, Toscano is the Fairfax Commonwealth's attorney. He's Soros-funded. He's awful. And during his tenure, major crimes have risen in Fairfax County. There was a primary to replace him. That's really the only game in town. Ed Nuttall lost, but not by much. Nuttall in Fairfax County did pretty well. He was edged out by Steve Toscano, but he is far preferable to the Toscano regime. So what Marco is saying is there's a website here. It's called Ed Nuttall, Nuttall, Ed Nuttall-write-in.com. If you just Google Ed Nuttall write-in campaign, you'll find it. It's right there at the top. But I think it helps to know how to spell his name if you're going to write it in and maybe help right the ship in Fairfax County. Can it be done? Boy, I hope so. It's worth a shot. Good afternoon. Here we go. It's 4:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Gabriel Noronha joins us. He is a former State Department advisor on Iran. He'll react to this news that we're giving billions of dollars to the Iranians. How are they going to use it? Terrorism is the answer. We'll talk to him about that. And we'll chat with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We've been talking for some weeks now about how the left has moved from subtle election meddling to brazen election meddling, to the point that there's an active campaign right now nationwide to have Donald Trump's name removed from ballots to deprive voters of the ability to even choose him during the election. I mean, it is just so crazy. And now there's, it looks like some anti-Trump forces are beginning to realize that this is this is a little too obvious. So now I'm beginning to see a bunch of headlines. CNN, election officials reject calls to unilaterally block Trump from the ballot using the 14th Amendment, but will defer to courts. What? What's going on here? Let's bring in Joe DiGenova. He's a legal analyst, of course, and a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. Joe, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Vince.
At this point, they're being very obvious about their election meddling, aren't they?
Well, it's been pretty obvious for a long time, but this just puts a cap on it. They've been interfering since the first indictment against Trump in New York by Alvin Bragg, and now the other 3 indictments, and now these crazy attempts to use the 14th Amendment. It's pretty obvious that the use of the 14th Amendment is actually sanctionable legal action. There's no justification for this. If you apply the same standards that they're using to go after the Trump lawyers, anybody who files an action using the 14th Amendment should be disbarred. I don't believe that's what should happen. But since that's the standard they've now created, this is an outrageous abuse of the legal authority, and anybody who pursues it is not pursuing it in good faith.
Right. Yeah, all sorts of Trump lawyers are fighting to, stay out of jail right now because they gave Trump legal advice. Meanwhile, these guys are all straight up saying that the Constitution should be torn up. I mean, clearly there are massive problems here. But these guys, unfortunately, in today's day and age, Joe, it seems like if you're a lefty legal mind, or even if you're a conservative legal mind, so long as you hate Trump, you can kind of get away with saying anything.
Well, that's pretty much the case. I mean, if you look at the conduct of the judges in the federal court in D.C. and all around the country, Trump has no friends in the legal system. That's one of the most despicable parts of this entire thing, is what these people have done to the legal system. The Trumpification of it and the abuse of it to accomplish partisan ends is just really awful. And we're going to pay a dear price for this in the long haul.
How much do they despise the voters? Because it really seems like the only way that you would move to remove someone's name from a ballot is if you had contempt for the voters and their decision making.
Well, there's no doubt that they have contempt for the voters. I mean, this is pretty despicable stuff, no matter how you cut it. This is why we have elections. We're not supposed to be trying to settle things through the courts about who should be on a ballot or who shouldn't with regard to stuff like this. I mean, clearly, if somebody's not an American citizen and they don't have the right to be in the country legally, I mean, you want to, go at it if you want to go after stuff like that. But that's not what this is about. This is about abusing the legal process for purposes of interfering in an election, because it's exactly what they're doing. They are interfering in an election.
Apparently, secretaries of state in places like Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire, and Minnesota are now saying they don't have the power on their own to invoke the 14th Amendment and block Trump from the ballot. I guess they're suggesting that they're going to leave it to the courts to decide. What judge would say that Trump is disqualified from being on a ballot?
Well, there are plenty of them around the country. There are Democrats. There may be some loony Republican state judges. I don't think any federal judge is going to get anywhere near this as long as the House remains in the hands of Republicans, because this might very well be an impeachable offense to misconstrue federal law and the Constitution in such a horrific way.
Yes.
But the bottom line is, in America today, anything is possible, because you know what happens when the Democrats don't like something, they just change the rules. And so that's what they're trying to do now. And look what they just did in the United States Senate. For 200 years, we've had people dressing properly on the floor of the United States Senate. And now, because one nutbag from Pennsylvania doesn't like to wear clothes unless they sort of go around in a gym pants and a hoodie, the United States Senate is now going to look like Fifth and Vine in Philadelphia.
Yeah. In fact, the QAnon shaman's outfit is now officially a part of the dress code of the United States Senate. That's what Chuck Schumer passed. And slob wear is now allowed.
It's just remarkable. You can do anything if you're a Democrat. And as I said, their rule is, if you don't like the rules, just change them. That's not the way you survive as a republic. That's just not the way you do it. But Democrats don't care about that. They care about power. I agree with Mark Levin. Democrats hate America. That's why they're doing this. They want to remake it in the image of the Democratic Party. God help us all.
Yeah, and by the way, congrats to Mark. I mean, as usual, #1 bestseller of that book, and it was a #1 bestseller before it was even available. It's now available today. Actually, I'm holding it in my hand. The Democrat Party Hates America. We'll be talking to Mark about that soon. So thank you for mentioning that. This is. It is amazing to watch these Democrats, just brazenly, constantly meddling in our election system. Is it possible for anybody who has actual power in this country to ever step up and say, enough, stop it? And what I mean by that is specifically the United States Supreme Court. As these guys contemplate removing Trump from ballots on the basis of no criminal conviction, nothing, just literally nothing, just political hatred. Can the Supreme Court step in and say enough?
If they get a case, they should. But they ignored the great case that Texas filed against one other state. I can't remember it right now, but I mean, there were some great cases the Supreme Court could have taken up over the last election,
right,
but it stayed out of it. The only way they're going to get involved in any election is it's way in advance of the election itself. I can't see the Supreme Court getting involved in an election anymore after the election, unless it's, like Florida in 2000. It's going to be tough because they've been pummeled by Schumer and the Democrats, and they're worried about the integrity of the court, and they don't want to overstep their role and all of that.
Yeah.
Once you get them thinking like that, then you've won. The Democrats have won. Of course they should be interceding in these cases. They should have taken the Texas case. They should have ruled on it. Even if they were going to rule against Texas, they should have taken the case. They decided not to do it, and that was a mistake on their part, because what they've done is they've invited this type of activity by not stepping in and slapping stuff down when they have the opportunity to do so.
And if they don't step in, it makes it all the easier to actually rig the election, because if Michigan, for instance, decides, yeah, we're going to take Trump off the ballot, that's 15 electoral votes that just disappear. Trump has no chance of getting them. And at this moment, Joe DiGenova, this election looks like it's slated to be another nail-biter. 15 electoral votes is likely to make all the difference in the world. The Supreme Court, if it cares about the country, should step up.
Well, they're going to have to intervene in situations. If cases get to them about his name being on the ballot, they will have no choice but to get involved, because if they don't, it'll be on them. It won't be on anybody else. They will have cowed to the left. They will have cowed to Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the court. You listen to me, Kavanaugh. You listen to me, Gorsuch. He should have been disbarred. He's a member of the New York bar, but apparently he's more concerned about the dress code in the Senate than the decorum on the steps of the Supreme Court. No, the court will have to step in if there are cases, if any cases make it to them, involving whether or not Trump's on the ballot.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you feel good about the election landscape or not right now. Clearly, you know that the left is constantly trying to meddle, as we've been talking about this throughout. Do you think we're in an improved position now than we were in 2020?
Hard to tell, because I don't know what kind of ground game the Republican National Committee has and state Republican parties all over the country. One of the things that hurt us very badly in 2022 was we had lousy state legislatures. Republican state legislators were cowards. They didn't want to do things. They were afraid to take action. The same thing in 2020. So 2022 was an example of bad ground game. I don't know what's been done to make up for that. If you're going to rely on highly paid consultants to advise you on how to message, you're going to lose.
Yes.
Because this is about turnout. This is about pure turnout. This is about getting voters. This is about voter harvesting of ballots. It's about mail-in ballots. It's voting early. And the Republican Party is either going to, this is the last clear chance. I mean, if we lose this election and lose the Senate and the House and the presidency, the Republican Party will be moribund for 20 years at least.
I'm worried that lessons haven't been meaningfully learned. I know, my friend Hans von Spakovsky has pointed out to me many times. We talked about a lot of this. There have been state laws that have been changed. Places like Georgia and Texas, they've definitely improved their elections. That's all well and good. Those are great things. But at the national level, the RNC, I'm concerned about not enough movement, and also Ronna McDaniel's leadership there, because for instance, just to give you an example of something that's not specifically election related, but these primary debates, we were told, what was it, a year ago, Corey? We were told that these primary debates would be handled by conservative media, that it would be conservative media figures who would be conducting the debates among people all trying to compete to become the Republican nominee. Now, obviously, Trump is sitting this out, but I don't think that changes the predicate here, which is that conservatives should be asking these questions. And last week, they announced NBC is hosting the third debate. So what is the likeliness that they're changing anything else if they're sticking with the status quo of the debate process?
I don't understand this election of NBC. I mean, if you watch Kristen Welker's interview of Donald Trump, I mean, she's dumb, she's arrogant, she's obviously anti-Trump,
and she's scared.
Obviously a lefty.
She's scared too.
Sure, and she's not smart enough to know, and she has no historical background. For example, I've always said to myself, it would be so much fun to be in one of those interviews and just talk to her and say, well, what did you think of the NBN food? And she probably would think you're talking about a Chinese meal. Instead of the 1954 defeat of the French army in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought the greatest question they asked Hillary Clinton when she was running for president was, what'd you think of Tony Lazzari's year this year with the Yankees?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he was from the 1930s. She would have said, oh, I thought it was great. I thought he's spectacular.
Yeah.
She would have done what she always does. She lies.
Yeah.
Kristen Welker is the same way. She thinks because she's good looking, she works for NBC, she gets paid a lot of money, and she can construct a compound sentence that she's smart. She isn't. She's historically ignorant. She got all the facts wrong, for example, on the Democratic Party's position on abortion after birth.
Yes.
Up until birth and after birth. She was wrong. She was just absolutely wrong, and she kept denying it. Now, if you're at NBC and you're a suit or a skirt, whoever runs NBC these days, it's hard to tell. You sit down with her and say, hey, you know what, Kristen? You really got to bone up a little bit on this stuff because you made a fool of yourself with the president. He was right and you were wrong.
Totally. Yeah. And it's they're militantly wedded to their ignorance on so many of these things. It's just,
yes.
It's
yes.
like,
well,
it's like I refuse to even find out what's actually going on here. I'm just going to stick to the party line on this subject.
Hating Trump is a religion. So you can do anything you want, any way you want. But the truth is, they look dumber and dumber over time. So NBC is now going to host the third debate. Now, that to me is just stupid. It's just stupid. It should have gone to Newsmax. That's what you do with that. You tell these people to go to hell. It's going to Newsmax.
Yeah, exactly. At least get somebody up there who cares about what these people care about and understands it and can ask real legitimate questions on the subject. And by the way, there is a very interesting debate to be had among those candidates, including if Donald Trump were to participate, although at this point it doesn't make any sense for him to, because every time he declines it, he goes up in the polls anyway, so that's what he's doing this coming week. Yep. He'll be visiting with all of these auto workers who are on strike, a smart move, and he's sort of outmaneuvering everybody to include Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and Trump is in a position where his choices are actually few in number, given the number of trials that are coming up, and we have no way of knowing which, and that's the uncontrollable in this entire thing.
Yeah.
How are those going to play out? Basically, 4 simultaneous trials. They can say all they want about this, that, and the other thing in the sequence. The truth is, they're simultaneous. They're all happening at the same time, so that he will be tied up from the beginning of the primary season all the way through Election Day and after. And the notion that is not going to have an effect on the American people is stupid.
Yeah, I mean,
First of all, the American people get it. They know what's going on. They understand why these cases have been brought. They have nothing to do with vindicating legitimate interests of the criminal justice system. This is about stopping Donald Trump, just like the gag order that Smith wants against Trump is designed to shut him up so he cannot talk about certain things while he's campaigning.
So totally. And you could be even Kristen Welker and understand the following point, which is that all of the events in question are things that have supposedly happened either in late 2020 or early 2021. Donald Trump is being charged for all of them at this moment. The trials are going to begin at this very specific moment 3 years later, 4 years later. I mean, Joe, in your experience as a prosecutor, when you encountered crimes and then would prosecute people, did you normally wait 3.5 years to bring the charges?
No, because we didn't do things like this, which is one of the reasons, by the way, that I just despise the current United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. I've never said that about anybody in that office. There were some of them who were a little less effective than they should have been. This guy is bad. He is really bad. He's a hack. His name is Matthew Graves. Remember that name, listeners. Matthew Graves. He tries to hide. He doesn't actually go out and seek publicity. He just tries to undermine the entire system by having a woke left-wing agenda, doing everything that Merrick Garland wants, treats the January 6th offenders, all of them, no matter what their role was, like they're all, murderers and that they've committed treason. This guy is a joke as a United States attorney. He's an embarrassment to the office. But that's what we have. All over the United States, there are U.S. attorneys like Matthew Graves. They're just like little chicken littles following the orders from the master. It's unbelievable. They're an embarrassment to federal law enforcement.
And in Matt Graves' case, you experienced this because you were the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. It's a very different job than other U.S. attorneys, right, given its role in prosecuting actual street crime in D.C.
Sure, that's why he's been criticized by the police chief and the mayor for dropping so many cases. Now he turns around and he blames the police department, bad police work, all this. That's a bunch of crap. You sit down and you work with people, you make sure, but he's consumed by January 6th. I mean, remember, the Attorney General and all the people in the department tell us this is the largest single criminal investigation in the history of the department. What a bunch of crap. Why would you waste this much time and energy on those cases? You didn't have to go after these people like this. There were ways to do this in a much less expensive and extensive way. They're trying to make a point. They're trying to stop political dissent. So this guy Graves thinks that that doesn't have any effect on law enforcement and street crime. Of course it does. His office is distracted. They're distracted by a political game. His leadership sucks. He shouldn't be the United States attorney. He's an embarrassment to the office.
Joe, would you come back and help me do some more naming and shaming of this clown? Do you think you can do that soon?
Anytime.
Okay, good. We'll continue this conversation. Thank you very much. Joe DiGenova, as always, appreciate your time, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
It's 4:53 now. See? I swear he drinks a bottle of Tabasco sauce before he begins. All right, a bunch of terrorists and thieves headed back to Iran, as well as many billions of dollars. That was the doing of the Biden administration and the conversation we're about to have with Gabriel Naronha, a former State Department official. Hang tight, a lot to talk about.